Start over. All right. We have example 9. Example 9 is to simplify a complex rational expression. All right. What we need to do is combine the top together because we have two fractions on top right now. We need to get those two things together. Well, to be able to subtract, I have to have a common denominator. The common denominator of these is 3x. Okay? Since this already, what I did was I multiplied the two denominators together. That's how I got the 3x. Since this already had an x, I had to multiply this by 3, so I got to multiply the top by 3. Same here, I already had a 3, so I had to multiply the bottom by x, so I got to multiply the top by x. So I end up with that. When I actually subtract these, I end up with 3 minus 2x. Okay? I'm going to rewrite that because I don't like the way that looks. I'm going to rewrite it as 2x plus 3. It's the same thing. And I'll put that over 3x. So that's the top. Okay? The bottom, we got to do the same thing. We got to find a common denominator. Well, we just multiply the two things together. That gives me 4x. That means I had to multiply this by 4, I had to multiply that by 4. I had to multiply this by x, I had to multiply that by x. Combine them together, I get 4 plus 3x over 4x, which I can rewrite as 3x plus 4 over 4x. Now, this was my top over 3x, which is over 3x plus 4, which is over 4x. All right, now, this really means divide. So I'm going to take this fraction divided by this fraction. So let's rewrite that. Okay, so now we have that. Once we get to this point, we can find some restrictions. Well, right now we set our denominators equal to 0. I divide by 3. I get x cannot be 0, because 0 divided by 3 is 0. So there's one restriction. If I do the same thing to here, I find out I get the same thing, that x can't be 0. So it works for both of these. All right, so there's our restriction right now. Back to simplifying this. When we divide fractions, we can't actually divide fractions. We have to multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, so we have a fraction divided by a fraction. We can't actually divide fractions. So what we have to do is change this to multiplying by the reciprocal. So we get negative 2x plus 3 over 3x. We're going to multiply that by the reciprocal here, which is 4x over 3x plus 4. Once we get to this point, we have a new new denominator. This new denominator, we have to set equal to 0 to find out if there's any restriction. We get 3x equals negative 4. We divide by 3. We get x cannot be negative 4/3. So there is another restriction. That's part of our answer. We actually multiply now. So we end up with, oh actually I'm sorry, I can reduce by taking out an x. So I'm going to take out that x. So now I can multiply, I get 4 times the quantity negative 2x plus 3 over 3 times 3x plus 4. I distribute in, I get negative 8x plus 12 over 9x plus 12. Okay? Now, there's nothing else I can do, so that is my simplified answer. These two are my restrictions, and that is it. Number 10, simplifying a complex rational expression. We have 1 over x plus 7 minus 1 over x is all over 7. What we need to do first is combine our numerator together. To do that, we have to have a common denominator to be able to subtract. Our common denominator is going to be x plus 7 times x. Okay? We need to find our two restrictions right now. So we set them equal to 0. We subtract 7. X cannot be negative 7. There's one restriction. We know x cannot be 0. There's our other restriction. Because if any of those are those numbers, we get 0 in the denominator, we can't have that. So now, that's our common denominator for the top. We have we have something over x plus 7 times x. Well, we already had the x plus 7. We needed the x. So x times 1 is x minus, over here we have x plus 7 times x. We already had the x, so we needed the x plus 7. X plus 7 times 1 is x plus 7. We can combine these together now. Remember, we've got to deal that negative sign in there. So we end up with x minus 7 over x plus 7 times x. These two can combine together. X minus x is 0, so we end up with negative 7 over x plus 7 times x. Now, that was our top. We're dividing that by 7, and if we write 7 as a fraction, that's 7 over 1. So now, since we're dividing by 7 over 1, we can't really divide fractions, so we're going to change it to multiplying by the reciprocal. So if we do that, we get negative 7 over x plus 7 times x times the quantity of 1 over 7, because we flipped that. Now, can we cancel anything out? Yes, we can. We can cancel out the 7s. That leaves me with a negative 1 here, because you've got to have something hold this spot, and 7 divided by 7 is 1. And since there's a negative, it's a negative. Over here, same thing. 7 divided by 7 is 1. So now, negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. Alright, on bottom, this times this is just this. So we can go ahead and distribute that inside to get x squared plus 7x. And then there is my answer, with my two restrictions here.